Hi, Julie.
Hi, Louise. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. I like this pitch deck.
This what, sorry?
You like the pitch deck, like the
Oh,
screen.
yeah. Yeah, this new pitch deck app that I found. I can't stop reading that now. It's called it's called Pitch. Quite straightforward. Right. Hi, Kelly. How are you? Hi everyone. So I guess we can probably start, and other people will come along. Just want to make sure we start in time, so we finish in time, which is for the best for everyone. So first, I would like to welcome Julie Bainal and Kelly Hill for joining us for this talk about measuring the ROI of the data team. So before starting the discussion, I would like to present the speakers in a bit more detail. Great. Yeah, starting with Kelly Hill. So Kelly is the head of data of Khan Academy. So you probably all heard of Khan Academy as the platform helping students with all math and scientific subject. Personally, Khan Academy saved 2 of my degrees. So I'm thankful for that, and probably the case for other people here. But yeah, it's a nonprofit American organization, and its goal is to create a set of online tools to educate students using short videos as lessons. And as of now, Khan Academy videos have been viewed more than 1.9 billion times. So that's a lot. And Kenny Hill is the head of data for this huge organization. So thank you so much for joining. We also have Julie, who's the head of analytics at Clearbit. Clearbit is the marketing data engine for customer interaction. So they provide tools that are helping businesses understand their customers, identify future prospects, and personalize every single marketing interactions. So if you don't know the company, don't hesitate to check it out. Can be a great help for all your marketing endeavors. And as for myself, I'm Louise Deleritz. I work at Castor, where I'm a growth analyst. And Castor is a data catalog company, which mission is to help organizations find and understand their data in a collaborative way. In short, to improve the overall data experience in the company. So now that we've introduced everyone, we can have a dive in the data team's big paradox, which is ROI justification. So it's funny enough that on one hand, data team's purpose is to help decision making by bringing visibility to complex business decisions. And how so? But it's by putting clear numbers on a key metric. So data team basically put key numbers on things, but on the other hand, data people rarely have or never have a clear answer when it comes to measuring the ROI of what they do. So putting a number of things is what data teams do best, but putting a number of what they do is probably the most frightening thing a data team can hear of. And the why of that is quite simple. The first reason is that data teams are new and data analysis is new, so there are no best practices for measuring ROI of data teams, such as there would be in marketing teams or finance teams. Secondly, it's that data teams have this particular way of working, is that they have an indirect, hardly measurable impact on business performance, because they impact the business through other teams. So for example, they would improve the performance of marketing teams by making great available dashboards for the marketing team to use. So the marketing team would be more productive, but it would be hard to measure the data team's impact through the marketing team. And it goes the same way through the finance team, through the ops team, and so on. And the third reason is that the relevant set of KPIs to look at varies according to the industry you work in. So where to go from this? Well, a few frameworks have emerged to kind of elaborate the solution. The solution is not straightforward because there is no one-fits-all solution. Because each company is unique and each data team is unique. But I would like to just discuss a few frameworks to put them as a basis of the discussion, so we can start from here for a discussion afterwards. So the first framework I would like to go over is a framework proposed by Michael Bengso, who works at Monzo, and it's this framework introduces a formula to calculate the ROI of data work. So the formula takes into account the number of data people impacted by your work, the measure of how these people are impacted, the impact to the business, and the time spent during the work. So the great thing is that this is a really precise formula. The problem is that it's made of elements which are super hard to calculate. The very interesting thing about this framework is that it kind of splits data team in two parts, and it postpones that you should think differently about the impact of data teams depending on which role you're considering. So you kind of make the distinction between system people, such as data engineers, analytics engineers, and data analysts, which role is to improve system, build reliable system, and KPI people who have a direct business impact. So KPI people are more like machine learning scientists and data scientists. So the system people is the system people work as improving the life of the KPI people by providing a reliable data infrastructure, by providing clear data models which data scientists and machine learning scientists can use. And so you have to take this into account when measuring their performance, because they won't impact the KPI and the business directly. And then the KPI people their performance can be evaluated in in an easier way by just looking at the KPI they work in. If you're building an ML model to prevent fraud in real time, it's quite easy to evaluate how this ML model is working. It's harder to measure the importance of the data engineer in building the reliable infrastructure, which then led to this ML model to be built. So this is the most complex of the framework I have to present. The two other ones are more simple, more high level, and less into details. So the second framework simply sees ROI as the measure of how quickly data-driven decisions are made. So this framework starts from the idea that data work is always linked to strategic decisions. So the moment an analyst is asked a question, a timer starts, and when the decision gets made based on this question, the timer stops. So the goal would be to minimize the time between the moment the question is asked and the moment the answer, analytically based answer, is given. So measuring this time should give the best indication of a data team's performance. Why? Well, this framework is good because if the main goal of data analytics is to ultimately make business decisions, which a lot of people agree on, then this is the most direct way of measuring this goal. This also encourages data analysts and data people to focus on helping decision making rather than sometimes getting lost in exploratory data analysis, which never ends up not leading to any decision. And the idea here is that the ultimate judges of the performance of the team is decision makers, because they have the most insight as to how much they've been helped by analytics and data people into their decision making processes. So yeah, as you can see, that's a quite high level framework, which can be really powerful, but sometimes doesn't take into account all the data engineers and kind of system people of the data team we've seen before, but more the analyst side. The last framework I wanted to discuss is proposed by a company called Hex, and it's really interesting framework, and the approach is way more relaxed. The idea is that you shouldn't be measuring the ROI of your data team yourself, but you should be letting other teams do it for you. That sounds extremely risky and making you vulnerable, but it actually makes a lot of sense, because if your data team is really providing value through other teams, then the leaders of other functions will be defending you with all their heart. So if you're changing the life of the marketing or ops team, any reduction in the size of your team will lead them to a lot of will arouse anger in other team and lead them to defend you with decision makers. And yeah, so reducing the team would lead, for example, the VP of marketing and head of ops to be fighting for you allocating more resources to the data team. And if your partners in other functions are not willing to defend your case and defend the case of the data team, then maybe it's time to rethink how you're operating, because it means you have a limited business impact, or your work is just detached from business outcomes, which isn't good news either. So these are three frameworks, the three emerging frameworks that I thought were interesting to discuss, and I would like to turn to Julie and Kelly now, who will be able to tell us a lot about how these frameworks apply in practice. I mean, in theory, it's very interesting to look at this, but I'm sure that in practice, in real data teams, things are looking quite different. So now to start the discussion, Julie, would you like to tell us what does your data team look like? How many people in it? What's the reporting style of it? And kind of the model to understand where you're starting from?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Kelly and I have very, very different teams. So you're going to get yeah, I'm a data team of one. So our data structure is me to me. I report into marketing. So primarily started in as growth ops, because as many of you are probably aware, marketing has the highest demand for analytics, reporting, understanding how campaigns are working. So that's how I started, and then started once we got marketing under control, worked with sales, and now kind of moving more to product analytics. So our goal and my goal kind of to build the team out is right now we're actually working with kind of outside consultants to help. Montreal Analytics is helping with our DBT analytics engineering. And also we have analytics skills that are decentralized on other teams, but my responsibility is I own the data. So I am not necessarily the manager of the data people. I manage the data infrastructure, the tech that surrounds our data. And I'd love to hear how Kelly's team is set up, because it's probably completely different than mine.
Yeah, it is a bit different. So my team, it's the Data Insights Group, and it's a total of 16 people, including me, and we're broken down into 3 sub-teams. I did 5 years ago, I did start off as a team of 1 though, Julie, at Khan Academy. I came to Khan Academy to build our efficacy and research team, starting as a team of 1, and then my scope broadened. So our Data Insights Group includes the original efficacy and research team that I built. And then we also have and that efficacy team is a total of 5 people. And that team's a little different than I think what many people are used to, because remember, Khan Academy is an education company. And so the point of the efficacy team is to really understand the efficacy of our product. So like, what kind of impact are we having on moving the needle on learner outcomes? So their analytics are really different than our analytics team, which is 8 people on the analytics team that, we have marketing analysts, product analysts, growth analysts, pretty typical roles I imagine that you're all familiar with. And then the third sub team and a newer sub team is our analytics engineering sub team. And that's 2 people on that right now. And then the last person, the most recent hire, the newest role that we just added, is a technical program manager for data. And this person reports into me and sits across all of the sub teams, and essentially is our liaison between data infrastructure and product engineering teams. I should also mention that the Data Insights Group at Khan Academy sits within our larger engineering team. So data infrastructure and product engineers are, like our metaphorical cousins, so to speak.
I have a follow-up question to that. So you started as a team of 1. Obviously, now you're a team of 16. And I think this goes to the next question that Louise is going to ask is like, how did you like feel the pressure from being 1 to build to 16 and continue to like prove out the ROI? Like how did you get there? How did you get those 16 additional hires?
So on the efficacy side of things, it was kind of demanded of us. You know, when you're an education technology product, in order to be in schools and with districts, people want to know like, hey, even though this thing is free, does this thing work? Am I going to waste my teacher's time and my kids' time on using this? And so the efficacy ROI was kind of almost like table stakes, and we didn't have an internal team. We had for a while there were some external researchers that were publishing studies. So the efficacy ROI kind of built itself out of a market need, so to speak. Also, our funders are quite savvy. We are a nonprofit organization primarily funded through philanthropy, and so our funders were also saying, "Hey, we want to know the return on our investment of Khan Academy." Not as measured of top of funnel, how many users are you getting? Because, you know, everyone knows Khan Academy, we have tremendous reach, but more bottom of funnel, how are you moving the needle on learning? And that's really an efficacy question to answer. And so the efficacy team naturally grew over time as, you know, our surface area grew, and then the analytics team actually predated the efficacy team. So the analytics team was in place before I joined, but reporting a totally different reporting structure, reporting into product. And then I brought the teams together and then created the analytics engineering subgroup. And then it was just this past summer that they moved us into engineering. And that was a really wise organizational change. We've had more progress on our data roadmap in the last 6 months than in the last 6 years. I think just organizationally having you know, we're all on the same stack, right? We have the data producers in engineering, and then we're really the data consumers. And it doesn't seem like a big deal, but having them organizationally connected and all reporting up through the same decision maker really has made a difference for my team. And I'm grateful that we made that switch. Sometimes they don't really know where to put data teams. I've reported into, you name the function, I've reported into product, content, CFO. And now engineering, I think, has been the most logical and sensible home. And I'm kind of wondering why we didn't do that 5 years ago, but here we are.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that, because there's a lot of hesitation between which model to adopt and who to report to, and that's a whole other debate. But it's interesting because I rarely see reporting to engineering teams as a I mean, it's the most efficient thing. So it's quite a discovery. But yeah, Julie, I would also like to hear about you. Like, have you also felt this pressure to kind of demonstrate the return on investment of your? I mean, for you, it's more data tools, I would expect, as you're alone in the data teams. But surely you've been pressured on to defend the investment into a new tool. Or any other investment?
Yeah, I think I've struggled with it. Since I moved from marketing, which is the money maker, to analytics, which can traditionally be seen as overhead, of justifying kind of your place. The tech stack is not cheap. And so every new tool I want to bring in, forget the security and privacy issues, there's also the cost of them that comes in. And I've had to fight for that, but not to the point where it's ever been said no. There isn't a way that I've proven it out other than this will help me move faster. There is no number I use, but I've definitely struggled with how do I not get seen as overhead? And I think we'll kind of discuss the strategies that I've used a little bit later, but it is something that I would say my first year at Clearbit, I definitely felt that very much every morning I showed up for work as how am I not overhead? And now, given a few of the things that we've done, it's not something I think of as much anymore. It's not something I feel. I think we've been able to prove the value of the analytics and its function for the whole company.
I'm muted. Thank you so much. And Kelly, now coming back to the frameworks I discussed briefly at the beginning, Is there any of them that you would find more useful than the others? Like in practice, how do you feel like they're applied? Is any of them fundamentally biased or wrong in your opinion?
Yeah, so I was reading through the frameworks the other day, and actually, I think all of them are applicable depending on the situation. So that first framework that you showed, that was kind of like the emoji equation. I haven't used that directly to kind of say, like, this is the ROI of our data team, but rather have used it to say, engineering, this is why we need this thing built. Or why you need to build this pipeline or this data table or whatever the case may be, because my team is spending, 70% of their time cleaning data and finding data. Whereas if this was built in a different way, my team would be able to move faster and be more efficient and turn around the insights faster. And so that equation I've more so used to say, like, this is why we need to have something in place. And then the idea around like how quickly, the second framework around how quickly data-driven decisions are made, I see that as really important. That's kind of the analytics team, and how so our analytics team is a centralized team, but each analyst is embedded into different business teams. And so, that kind of also bleeds into framework 3 of the other teams measuring it. So how analytics has grown in their headcount is because philanthropy is like, hey, we need an analyst allocated to philanthropy. We need support over here. And so it's really other teams that have made the case to grow the analytics team by kind of that idea of letting them measure it and advocating for it and needing it. And then back to framework 2 about how quickly decisions are being made. Analytics definitely moves faster on decision science and providing that to to our business team stakeholders, whereas the efficacy research cycle is a bit slower, just because the nature and the complexity of the work. And so for example, we're just sharing results like yesterday on a study from 2020-21 school year. So it's a bit of a lag while we wait for kids' test scores to come in and stuff, but the quality of the insights from that work has huge levers for product improvement. I would describe the efficacy research scientists somewhere between a data scientist and a machine learning scientist. They're kind of, they could fall into either of those categories, but they're really neither. So I really think that we've used, not knowing the frameworks and the names for them until like yesterday, I think we have I see us leveraging a blend of all of them in what we're doing.
Okay, well, that's super interesting. Super interesting to hear. And Julie, on your side, how have you been measuring the performance of your data team, if I may say? And have you also used any of these frameworks or a blend of these, like Kelly?
So very similar to Kelly, have used all 3. I'd say it's also the stage of your data team. So when I started at Clearbit, the first thing that I always do is just make sure the data is good, make sure we have clear data. So there's kind of like stage 1 is the value of your data. So if you think of like an heirloom that you have in the family, like you're never going to sell it, but it is worth something. So like that very early stage is like the data itself is worth something. And so your job is to, I don't know if we're using the analogy, and I'm terrible at analogies, like polish up the heirloom and make sure that it's in its best shape possible. And so early on, that was my ROI. That was how I measured it. It's just the quality of the data, the ease with which, you could get answers from kind of not having to clean and dedupe and all of that. And then as we've grown and as the data itself has become pretty steady, I don't think anyone would ever say their data is perfect, because that's a lie. There's always errors, there's always issues. But once we got it to a place where I say 80% and above, and I can sleep okay at night. And then as we move to like kind of stage 2 is, I think, more in line with the first one. It's like the multiplier effect. So I really like to think of myself as a multiplier. So what I build helps people move faster and helps multiple people and helps them get their answers. So every task, every model I build, every report I build, every tool I implement, it's like, can this multiply, like whatever effort I put in here, can I get 2x, 3x, 4x out of it for my team, or out of it for me, right? Does this make me 2 times faster? Does this make me? So I don't know that I've ever put to paper the multiplier effect. It's a sense, it's a feeling, it's an understanding, but that's kind of, I say, stage 2, and then stage 3 is where we're moving to, sort of in that a bit, I would say. In the third one is just like getting data to the tools, and so operationalizing data so that it can be used by like our marketing team, our sales team, and campaigns. And so not just reporting function, but actually making data an asset in the campaigns, in the programs, in the in whatever our teams are running in real time.
And are you using any specific tooling or specific metric to measure the performance today of your data work? Like any, for example, the number of data user, the number of views on your dashboards. What for you are the few, like 2 or 3 metrics that would measure the efficacy of data work the most easily?
I'm not sure anyone's going to love my answer, but I sort of think of like big problems that we've solved. So, you know, marketing team really needs to solve attribution, needs to solve web analytics. And so for me, it's the reduction in requests in that category. So it's making that information more readily available. I don't get asked about attribution anymore by our team. Nobody asked me because it's all been made available to them. And so to me, that's how we kind of tick it off the list, right? Like I don't want to tag anything as attribution anymore in the request in our Asana board. And then moving down that funnel as we're starting to solve problems, are we reducing the number of tickets, questions, ad hoc requests about that? And so it's not a metric or a KPI, but it can be measured in the sense that you're tagging, tracking, and solving problems on that to-do list.
Yeah, so is that also making other teams more independent with the data you provide them?
Yeah, I mean, the goal for me is I don't want to have to be doing a ton of reporting as a team of one. So it's like, how do I get the data in the hands self-serve so that they can just answer those questions on their own?
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting, and that's completely it's not a metric, but as you say, it's measurable, and you can quantify it. And Kelly, on your side, which are the, maybe not metrics, but like 2 or 3 things that you can measure? You said your performance doubled over the last 6 months compared to the last 6 years, or if I'm right. How can you assert this? What are you measuring?
Yeah, so similar to Julie with the rolling out of self-service, we started on that journey about a year ago. It's a long journey of, to getting the BI tool in place, building out the underlying data models, getting teams trained up on it, and all of that. That's actually why we're building out more of our analytics engineering team to help with that self-service. We noticed that a lot of the types of questions being asked of our analytics team were things that could be self-service, but an analyst needed to stop what they were doing and go get what I would call data facts, because business teams couldn't write queries to get the facts that they needed. And so now we're moving to a self-service role. We're not quite there yet. It's a bit of a slow rollout, but we do believe that the ROI will be high once business teams are able to fully self-service kind of the data facts and dashboarding and reports that they need, so that then it'll free up the analytics time for deeper insights, right? Deeper analyses, like cluster analyses and things like that, to better characterize what's happening, things that you can't self-service, that you really need their deep skill sets for. And so I guess a softer metric would be the shifting in the complexity of the projects that the analytics team is working on, moving away from that more basic reporting and into deeper analytics type of work. So that was similar to what Julie was saying. And then also on the analytics side, what's really important is the turnaround time from a business question being asked and then being able to provide those insights, decisions that we're trying to make around courses to launch or courses to improve and that kind of thing, getting timely data to be able to help the business teams make those decisions. so that they don't just go with their gut instinct. They use data to drive that decision making. And then the other one that's a bit unique for our analytics engineering team, one of the things for them would be infrastructure cost savings. And they do a phenomenal job. I get messages all the time like, oh, I just saved us $100,000. I cleaned this thing up. That's amazing. And so they're able to quantify their ROI with tons of cost savings by cleaning up tables, archiving things, and just saving on storage costs in general. So I think that's unique to analytics engineering, but then they also are kind of the lever that provides time savings for analysts and research scientists, so that there's a core table available for what they needed instead of having to go to more raw sources and spend more time and all of that. And so I think the analytics engineering team is easier to quantify perhaps than the other teams. But I guess that was so those are kind of all of the things that we kind of think about.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the framework, you kind of feel like it's the engineering team impact, which is the hardest to measure because they have an indirect impact through the analytics team, according to the structure they built. So yeah, super interesting. And so to follow up on this, do you, Kelly, do you feel that these the way to measure the performance of the data team would vary according to the team structure and the reporting dynamic? I mean, it would be really interesting to hear your view, considering you've changed this reporting dynamic. That's what you said at the beginning. Have you changed also the way to measure the performance as you change the reporting style?
Yeah, so we don't formally measure performance in this way, right? Like we measure performance in a more traditional way of each individual has their goals and progress towards goals kind of thing. But in terms of like a higher ROI of the team, I would think differently about each of the sub teams and what their ROI would and what metrics we would use. So for example, like I said, with analytics engineering, that would go around infrastructure cost savings and enabling the analysts and research scientists to move faster. And if we could quantify fewer headaches on the team as well. And then really for analytics, it's about the turnaround time and then this migration to self-service for them to be able to answer more complex questions, and that'll fade out the turnaround time because then people that need those quick data facts will be able to self-service them. And then the analytics time will be providing more complex types of insights. And then the efficacy team, their measure is even different than the others. Theirs is about, publishing scientific papers and reporting that out to the broader field, as well as working closely with product teams to implement learnings that we found from various studies. And so the metrics are a bit different across the various sub-teams.
Yeah. Okay, super interesting to hear as well. And Julie, what are your thoughts on that? Does the reporting style affect the performance? I mean, I understand it's different as your team of one, but maybe you've also encountered you've also been reporting to different people at Clearbit as you moved along. So can you tell us a bit about this?
Yeah, I'd say, when you're part of the marketing team, you're kind of, I would say that the analytics, the way it worked for me is that sort of marketing ops. And so every campaign that was run, every program we set out uses the data in some capacity, whether it's real time or whether it's, a one-time upload. So I would see my ROI as like the completion of those campaigns, right? Or my kind of KPIs is the completion of those campaigns. And so we work as a unit, and each one of those campaigns, whether you want to actually count the dollars that came from the pipeline as part of your KPI, you can, I don't. But it's like every email campaign uses the data that's been transformed using GBT, right? Every paid campaign is using insights from the data. So it's so ingrained in how marketing works that the success of those campaigns is coming from a very much a team effort. So I think when you sit on a team like that, you're part of the output that's produced by that team, and therefore the overall KPIs that the team is measured by trickle down. And I think for me on the analytics side, it's kind of, aside from multiplying, which is something that's always kind of measured every quarter, we look at kind of the impact and speed with which we've been able to solve problems that we were not able to solve 3 months ago. It's just kind of the core problems that we're solving. So it's like adding in, like attribution was a big one, funnel reporting, it's like just a check, right? Green, like the KPI is just like, it's a check. Have we done it? Do we have something in place? And then every other additional quarter is like, have we optimized it? Is it easier? What's the feedback? So that's kind of how you work, especially sitting on the marketing team. I am a puzzle piece for everything that we're producing.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that was my my last question. So we can probably go on questions from the rest of the room, beginning by if you two have questions for each other, Judy and Kelly, and then we can open it up to everyone. So if anyone has a question, you can just pop it in the chat and I'll make sure it gets asked.
I have a question for Kelly. I'm curious about your data tech stack. Like, how are you accomplishing what you're accomplishing with what?
Yeah, sure. So our whole stack, so I'll start all the way at the bottom around our, what our product engineers own, that first layer 0, and we're Google Shop. And so we've got Google Cloud Storage, Cloud Pub Sub, Google Data Flow are primarily our data instrumentation and storage layer. We also have a PostgreSQL database as well. And so that's kind of like the source of truth where everything lives. And then the next layer up, which is owned by our data infrastructure team, where they really focus on like the integration and ingestion layer. They're primarily using Airflow and Spark for that layer. And those two layers are not, not part of my team. Those are part of the larger engineering team. What my team owns is kind of what we would call layer 2, which is our analytics engineering team, the warehousing and curation layer. And so our warehouse is BigQuery, and we just recently started using DBT, which I feel like was a huge missed opportunity, because now that we've seen the light, we're like, why were we doing this forever ago? Analytics engineering is like off to the races now. And we brought someone in who already had experience in DBT, and then an analytics engineer who just learned it. And then our data infrastructure team started using it as well. And then sometimes they use Airflow as well, depending on the pipeline situation. And then the top layer, our analytics team, and our efficacy team, they're using different BI tools, so Looker and Mode, and then our efficacy team writes in R, so they're using like RStudio Workbench as their top layer of stuff. So that's our whole stack. How about yours? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say mine. I'd always seem like a lot, but there's more people to manage. So I guess we do all of our tracking Segment. So all of event tracking, everything goes from Segment to Redshift. DBT lays on top of that, and then Mode's our BI tool. And Census, we've recently, if anybody has ever heard me talk, you'll hear how much I love Census. Census has basically allowed me to take all that pretty data, and I know that's not the technical word, but the pretty data from DBT that's done all the transformations, and push it into our Salesforce, our Customer IO, all of our kind of customer-facing tools, which is sort of is allowed me to get to stage 3 of the ROI, where I'm able to put data into the tools in real time and be a part of the discussion about making them money.
Super interesting to see the tools you both work with. There was a question in the chat by Josh saying, where along the spectrum of complexity in data analytics project does AI or machine learning begin to come up? So who wants to start with this one?
I'm going to pass it to Kelly, because we're not there yet at Clearbit.
Yeah, so we have an interesting journey around machine learning. Like a decade ago, when Khan Academy was first created, we were early in on machine learning. All of our recommendations and content flowed through a very, very complex machine learning model. But the challenge that we faced is as our platform scaled, the model wasn't performant. Users, if everything was being sluggish, users, like the refresh rates and when content would come up was getting really slow. And then there was turnover on the team, and I don't think that anyone really understood the model that was going on under the hood. In my opinion, it seemed like it was like 160 some variables that fed into it. It was very complex. It felt like a bit like everything in the kitchen sink being dumped into the model. And so our pendulum swung in one very deep machine learning direction. And then we swung the total opposite way. We needed to move away from that system just because the performance was a terrible experience for our users. And because, there were some oddities happening where you might be a third grader and suddenly being recommended, solving linear equations or something like that. And it wasn't a good user experience. And so we moved away from that and did more of like a heuristic-based model as a way to recommend and curate content. And now where we're heading is finding the middle between those two extremes. So right now we don't have machine learning engineers on the team or machine learning scientists. Like I mentioned earlier, our analytics team dabbles in machine learning, and so do our research scientists, but those are more so to answer very specific questions, not necessarily for like production level code that's put into the product like it used to be. We do have some big ideas about our future roadmap and what things might look like. And in order to execute on those, I do believe we need to move back into a machine learning direction. But at the current moment, we're not quite ready for it. And the reason we're not ready for it is because our data isn't ready for it. We have a tremendous amount of data debt that we just started turning our attention to within like the last year and a half. We didn't build Khan Academy as a data product. We built it as a learning tool. And so as we should, the emphasis was all on the learners and what they can access and all of that. And then many years later, we all came to the realization of like, oh, wait, we are sitting on data is our biggest asset that we're not mining right now. We say we're sitting on crude. We're sitting on crude oil, but we need to do the work in order to like extract it and refine it and process it and all of that. And so that's kind of where we are right now. We've been investing more heavily in it and building up our data infrastructure team in order to get our data in the state that it needs to be in to do more sophisticated things, production level type of things. And so we're not quite there yet, but I do see a future state of us heading in that direction. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse, because if the data isn't there, we're going to bring in machine learning engineers who are going to be very disappointed in their job. And so, like I said, I think there's a future path, but we're not quite there yet. And right now it's more like ad hoc types of machine learning techniques on, extracted big data sets.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting you say that, because actually a lot of data teams start by hiring data scientists and data engineer and ML engineers when the data is not there yet, and we still haven't hired a data engineering team to make the infrastructure and make the data available. So, I mean, you looks like you're doing things in the right order for the moment. Right. Does anyone has any more questions? If not, I guess we will call it a day. Yeah, I want to thank you so much, Julie and Kelly, for joining us. It was so interesting, such an interesting conversation on a really complex topic, which is impossible to untangle for a lot of people. Right, on this note, I'll wish you a great day or a great evening, depending on where you are. It's evening for me.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.